call the police. That woman is destroying our property values." That was the shrill cry from HOA President Brenda Thornfield, right before she dialed 911. All because my wife dared to commit the heinous crime of planting wildflowers in her own yard. It was 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. My wife Patricia was on her knees in the garden, fingers sunk into Colorado soil still damp with the scent of morning rain and fresh beginnings. She wore her oldest pair of gardening jeans, hair spilling out of a messy ponytail. Across the street, Brenda was perched on her chemically perfect lawn, full makeup, starched khakis, and an expression like she'd just discovered a national emergency. Her manicured finger jabbed the air, conducting an orchestra of outrage. Moments later, a squad car pulled up. The officer got out, walked 3 steps toward the so-called dangerous criminal tending column, then froze. His jaw fell open. "Your Honor, Judge Blackwood." Brenda's trusty clipboard slipped from her hands, clattering on the pavement. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gulping air. "Oh, did I forget to mention? My wife's sentences. Criminals for a living now. Let me ask you, what would you do if your HOA Karen called the cops on you for gardening? Drop your own nightmare stories in the comments. And tell me, does your neighborhood have one of those people? But let me back up and explain how we got here. My name is Marcus Blackwood, 58 years old, retired after 32 years with the Colorado Springs Fire Department, where I spent my life running into burning buildings while everyone else ran out. My wife Patricia, she's been a municipal court judge for 15 years, the kind with the patience of a saint and the steel backbone to match 3 years ago we moved into Willowbrook Estates, chasing that picture-perfect retirement dream. You know the type. Winding streets named after the very trees they bulldozed to build it. Houses so uniform they look like they were designed by a committee of beige enthusiasts. Retirees like us mixed with young families whose kids chalk art somehow managed to offend the delicate sensibilities of certain neighbors. Our house, just a simple ranch, nothing flashy. Patricia fell in love with the big front yard. She'd always dreamed of a real garden after years of squeezing potted plants onto an apartment balcony. Enter Brenda Thornfield, 62, queen of the biggest house on Maple Ridge Drive, complete with fake columns that serve no purpose except screaming. Important people live here. A former real estate agent, Brenda runs the HOA presidency like she's commanding a small nation. She irons her jeans. She color codes her gardening tools. She's that kind of woman. For the first 2 years, things were fine. We paid our dues, kept the grass regulation length, never parked an RV in the driveway. Patricia jogged and waved at neighbors. I'd lend jumper cables in the winter. Normal suburban stuff that. Then came this spring. Patricia decided to replace our struggling Kentucky bluegrass with native Colorado wildflowers, columbines, Indian paintbrush, blanket flowers, plants that actually belong here and don't guzzle water in our semi-arid climate. She spent weekends on her knees in the soil, the sweet scent of lavender drifting with the breeze. That's when Brenda struck. I was sipping coffee, enjoying that first bitter swallow, watching Patricia deadhead blooms when I heard it, the sharp click-click-click of high heels marching up our driveway. It was 7:30 a.m. and there came Brenda, storming toward us like she was serving a search warrant. Pressed slacks, clouds of perfume thick enough to knock out a horse. "This landscaping violates our community standards," she barked, thrusting a piece of paper that looked like it came from a printer older than both of us. "I'm issuing a $200 fine for non-conforming vegetation." Patricia stood slowly, brushing soil from her jeans. Calm, steady, her judge's voice. "Which specific covenant does this violate?" Brenda's nostrils flared. Section 12.44 clearly states all landscaping must maintain community aesthetic standards. "Actually," Patricia said, her voice smooth as sunlight, "Section 12.44 only restricts dead or dying vegetation. These are native, healthy plants." "I know what I meant when we wrote those rules," Brenda snapped. And just like that, we realized this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Patricia had done her homework, combing through every page of the HOA covenants with the same attention she gives a legal brief. The rules said nothing about plant types, aesthetic standards, or outlawing wildflower gardens, only grass height, debris, and dead plants. But Brenda had a pattern. Within a week we heard 3 other stories. Frank Clove, 74-year Vietnam vet, fined $150 for growing tomatoes in the spot where his late wife's roses once bloomed. Reason: inappropriate for front yard display. Sarah Quinn, a single mom juggling 2 jobs, forced to pay $300 to erase her kid's chalk art from her own driveway because it was unsightly markings. And then the widow, on Pine Street, cited for excessive bird feeding after Brenda decided morning songbirds were a nuisance. Do you notice a theme? Elderly, struggling, vulnerable, people who didn't fit into Brenda's beige kingdom that morning. Patricia set her coffee mug down with a look I'd seen in courtrooms.com. Determined, dangerous. "We're not paying this fine," she said. Brenda didn't take no lightly. Within 2 days we received a certified letter, so pompous the mailman apologized while handing it over, embossed return address inside. The fine had magically doubled to $400. The letter claimed an emergency board meeting had been held, penalties enhanced, unanimous vote, pay within 10 days or face a lien on our property. But there was just one problem. Patricia called every single board member that same afternoon. Frank's gravelly voice crackled over the phone. Emergency meeting hell. I've been in Denver with my grandson all week. 2 others said the same. No notice, no meeting, no vote. Turns out Brenda's unanimous board consisted of herself, her neighbor Dorothy, and Dorothy's husband Carl, who spends most HOA meetings asleep in a lawn chair. Patricia knew the law. Colorado requires 14 days written notice before any fine, plus a hearing where you can defend yourself. Brenda had done none of that, which meant her fine carried the legal weight of a grocery list, so Patricia did what judges do best. She filed a formal complaint with the Colorado HOA Oversight Division, and that's when the surveillance began. Every morning at 6 a.m. Brenda's white Lexus prowled down our street like a shark circling prey. She'd park across from our house, engine idling, AC blasting, camera ready, click a slightly brown blade of grass. Click the hose coiled on the ground instead of on its hook. Click, click, click. Yesterday's newspaper still on the driveway at 6:15 a.m. Her door slams. That became our new alarm clock. But Brenda made her mistake. While she built her little folder of evidence, Patricia was building something else, a case. She started gathering neighbors' stories, keeping notes, piecing together the full pattern of Brenda's abuses. Asterisk Frank. She'd also fined him $50 for a Purple Heart license plate holder, only backing down when his veteran friends started asking questions. Sarah 3 violations before the chalk art bikes in her own driveway, a soccer ball on the lawn overnight, each time she paid, because a single mom doesn't have the luxury of fighting legal battles. The widow targeted for nothing more than bird songs interrupting Brenda's morning calls. Every victim was vulnerable. Every citation was petty. Every abuse was calculated. And then came the twist. Patricia ever thorough cross-referenced the violation dates with HOA meeting minutes. Guess what? Every fine was issued during weeks when multiple board members were out of town. Brenda wasn't just careless, she was calculated, timing her campaigns when no one could stop her. That evening, Patricia set down her mug and looked at me with the same quiet intensity she uses when sentencing repeat offenders. She's not just power-hungry, she said. She's deliberate. This is systematic intimidation. And while Brenda thought she was playing HOA hardball, Patricia was already playing a much bigger game. Every photo, every notice, every fake rule, all documented by someone who understood evidence better than most attorneys. Brenda thought she was queen of the neighborhood. She had no idea she was already losing her crown. A week after Patricia filed her state complaint, Brenda decided to unleash what she thought was her nuclear weapon. The architectural review process. The certified letter landed on our doorstep, like a brick thick as a legal brief, twice as pompous, according to Brenda. Our wildflower garden now required landscape modification approval from the HOA's Architectural Review Committee. Her interpretation: any change to existing vegetation patterns needed advance permission from her 3-member panel of beige enforcers. Now here's the truth about architectural review committees. I'd learned it back in my fire department days dealing with HOA restrictions on emergency vehicle access. They exist to stop your neighbor from painting their house neon pink or erecting a 20-foot Elvis statue in the front yard. They're not supposed to regulate what flowers you plant in soil that's been soiled for 15 years, but Brenda didn't care. She scheduled a hearing with just 48 hours notice. Location: the community center basement. Bring documentation. And just for flair, she announced she'd be bringing in an expert witness, a landscaping professional who'd testify that native Colorado plants were apparently inappropriate for Colorado soil. Patricia hung up the phone after hearing this and smiled. Not the warm smile she gives neighbors, her courtroom smile. The one that makes defense attorneys swallow hard. She wants a hearing, Patricia said, opening our bedroom closet. Let's give her a hearing. Thursday evening, 6:30 p.m. The community center basement smelled like half a century of potlucks and budget meetings, stale coffee, musty carpet, and that stubborn tang of mildew no amount of Febreze could kill. The buzzing fluorescent lights bathed everything in that institutional beige that makes you wonder if joy is even legal inside municipal buildings. At the folding table sat Brenda, flanked by Dorothy and Carl, pretending this was a corporate board meeting instead of a flower dispute. She even brought a briefcase. Then Patricia walked in, not in jeans, not in casual clothes, in full judicial robes, black, pressed, flawless, name badge gleaming. The Honorable Patricia Blackwood, municipal court judge, her hair pulled back into the severe bun she uses for sentencing hearings, leather briefcase in hand, the kind that costs more than some mortgages. The psychological warfare hit instantly. Brenda's proud posture collapsed like a punctured balloon. Dorothy fumbled with her glasses. Carl, half asleep for the last 3 years of HOA meetings, suddenly woke up and whispered, "Is she arresting somebody?" "Good evening," Patricia said in her official court voice, the one that makes public defenders stand straighter. "I understand we're here to discuss Colorado revised statutes regarding homeowner association authority over indigenous plant cultivation." Then she opened her briefcase. Not papers, a full legal brief. Case citations, Precedent analysis. Photographs of every single plant in our garden with Latin names and ecological studies. Brenda's expert witness, none other than her old real estate business partner, Roger Pembroke, a man who probably couldn't tell the difference between a dandelion and a daisy. When Patricia asked about his qualifications, Roger muttered something about 20 years in property management and community standards. Mr. Pembroke, Patricia said, pulling out a field guide. Can you identify the difference between Aquilegia caerulea and Aquilegia chrysantha? What now? Colorado's state flower versus its yellow cousin. Both columbines, both native, both in my garden. Which one violates your standards? Roger looked like a deer in headlights strapped to a freight train. Well, it's not really about specific plants. Then what exactly are we reviewing? Patricia pressed, and then came the twist. Patricia casually revealed she'd spent the afternoon photographing Brenda's own backyard. Mrs. Thornfield, can you explain why your ornamental fence exceeds the 6-foot limit by 8 inches, without approval? Brenda's face turned. Shades not found in nature. That's decorative screening, different, and your pond, built without architectural review. That's a water feature in your hot tub. These measurements show it violates the 15-foot setback by 4 feet. The only sound was Patricia's pen scratching notes, every excuse, every contradiction, logged by someone who's listened to liars for 15 years. In the back row, Frank, Sarah, and 3 other targeted neighbors sat like a jury, watching Brenda's authority collapse in real time. This hearing is concluded, Brenda finally snapped when Patricia asked her to cite the exact covenant banning native plants. But Patricia wasn't done. Actually, Mrs. Thornfield, one last question. When did this committee legally gain authority to regulate indigenous vegetation? Silence. The kind of silence where buzzing lights sound like jet engines. Brenda left that basement humiliated, but she wasn't finished. Exactly 1 week later, every single mailbox in Willowbrook Estates received a letter with an ominous seal designed to spike blood pressure, bold red letters across the top, Emergency Special Assessment Notice. According to Brenda, the HOA's legal expenses from frivolous complaints and harassment required each household to pay an immediate $5,000 assessment, due in 30 days. No exceptions. No payment plans. No appeals. The letter accused a selfish neighbor of forcing the community into costly legal battles, a thinly veiled attempt to turn the entire neighborhood against us. And she hit them where it hurt most, their wallets. But Brenda made one fatal mistake. She scheduled a mandatory neighborhood meeting to explain the assessment, and she picked the exact same community center basement where Patricia had just destroyed her architectural review circus. Sunday, 2 p.m. The basement was packed like a rush-hour subway car. Retirees who hadn't been to a meeting in 5 years clutched Brenda's letter like evidence in a murder trial. Young families crammed in with restless toddlers, the air thick with tension and leftover fried chicken from that morning's church potluck. At the front, Brenda wore a navy blazer screaming, "Trust me with your money." Dorothy sat stiffly. Carl looked half awake. Brenda even prepared a PowerPoint about HOA legal costs projected on a relic of a machine older than half the residents, friends and neighbors. She began, her voice dripping with real estate sincerity. We're facing an unprecedented legal crisis because one household refuses to follow community standards. Click a slide. Legal defense fund. $35,000 required. The number floated in the stale air like a death sentence. That's when Patricia stood. She'd been sitting quietly in the back with me and Frank, dressed down in jeans and a sweater blending in. But when she arose, the energy in the room shifted. Shoulders straight, notes in hand. The quiet authority of a woman who commands courtrooms for a living. "Excuse me, Mrs. Thornfield," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Before we discuss assessments, could you clarify which legal expenses we're covering?" Brenda faltered. "Well, obviously, defending against your frivolous complaints." "And which attorney is representing the HOA?" Patricia asked. "We've retained Morrison, Burke and Associates." Patricia nodded. "Interesting, because according to the Colorado Open Records Act request I filed last Tuesday, the HOA has actually paid $47,000 to Thornfield Property Solutions over the past 2 years. A murmur rippled through the room. "Your company, Mrs. Thornfield, $47,000. For what services exactly?" Brenda's face turned crimson. "Those are legitimate property management consulting fees." "For what services?" Patricia pressed, holding up a folder. "Because these invoices show $8,000 billed for landscape consultation. During months when no work was ever approved or completed." Frank stood. "She charged me $50 to remove weeds from my memorial rose garden. Guess where the money?" When Sarah's voice rose from the crowd. "My vegetable garden violation," she said. "The fine went to community beautification. My check was written to Thornfield Property Solutions." The basement's temperature seemed to plummet. Patricia's voice cut through. "And one more thing. Mrs. Thornfield has been collecting these so-called fees while the HOA's corporate status was dissolved 18 months ago due to unpaid state filing fees." Dead silence. Brenda hadn't just overplayed her hand, she'd exposed herself completely. Dead silence. The kind where you can hear your own pulse in your ears. What does that even mean? Called out Mrs. Peterson from Pine Street. Patricia's voice was calm but sharp as glass. It means every fine, every fee, every assessment collected over the last 18 months has been funneled into accounts personally controlled by Mrs. Thornfield on behalf of an HOA that, legally, doesn't even exist. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights suddenly felt louder. Someone's phone rang before being slapped silent. A toddler blurted out that he needed the potty, and there was Brenda frozen behind her folding table, her mouth opening and closing, like she was drowning in air. Then Frank's gravelly voice sliced through the tension. "Lady, are you telling us you've been stealing our money?" The basement detonated like a shaken soda can. "Stealing?" Brenda's voice cracked higher than a teenage boy's. "I have given everything to this community. Every fee collected goes straight to maintenance, to improvements." "Then you won't mind showing us the bank statements?" Patricia replied evenly. And that's when Brenda made her fatal mistake. She snatched up her briefcase, toppled her folding chair, and stormed toward the basement stairs, shrieking about ungrateful neighbors and consulting her attorney. The slam of the community center door echoed like a judge's gavel. But here's what Brenda didn't realize. Patricia had already spent a week digging into HOA records with her paralegal friend Jennifer at the courthouse. They weren't just sniffing around, they knew exactly what they were looking for. Patricia had seen this kind of fraud before. HOA embezzlement follows predictable, sloppy patterns. And the smoking gun. It was hiding in plain sight at the Colorado Secretary of State's office. By law, every HOA must file annual reports like any other corporation. Miss 2 years, and the HOA is automatically dissolved, just like forgetting to renew your driver's license. But with tens of thousands of dollars on the line, Brenda hadn't filed in 2022, or 2023, or 2024, for a year and a half. She had been collecting money under the name of an HOA that legally no longer existed. Every fine, every consulting fee went straight into her personal accounts, not into regulated HOA accounts with oversight. And that wasn't even the worst part. When Jennifer cross-referenced Brenda's violation history with fair housing discrimination databases, the pattern became unmistakable. Brenda hadn't been enforcing rules randomly. She had been deliberately targeting specific groups: elderly residents who'd rather pay than fight, single parents too busy to research their rights, families who didn't match her picture of perfect suburbia. It read like a discrimination manual. Frank's Purple Heart Memorial Garden, Sarah's children's chalk art, the widow's birdbath, my wife's wildflowers, each violation carefully aimed at people who were vulnerable or simply different. More than $23,000 had vanished into Brenda's accounts. Money neighbors had paid in good faith, thinking their HOA president was safeguarding the community, when in reality she was enforcing rules from an HOA that legally no longer existed. That night, Patricia spread the evidence across our kitchen table like a general laying out a battle plan: bank records, corporate filings, violation notices, photos, timestamps, a mountain of proof. "We could take this to the district attorney tomorrow," she said, sipping chamomile tea while reviewing statements. "She'd probably plea out, pay restitution, get probation." But Patricia's eyes narrowed. That same look I'd seen in her courtroom, when offenders showed no remorse for the people they'd hurt. But that won't restore Frank's garden. It won't erase Sarah's fear every time Brenda's car pulled into her driveway. It won't undo 2 years of bullying. Her smile shifted then, no longer the professional judge's smile, nor the polite neighbor's smile. This was something colder, sharper. "I want to give Brenda Thornfield exactly what she's been demanding," she said. "A community that follows the rules. All of them, including the ones about fraud, embezzlement, and discrimination." The air in our kitchen tasted of chamomile and righteous fire. Outside, the wildflower garden bloomed defiantly under the streetlight, each petal like a small victory waiting for war's end. By morning, our kitchen had become mission control for Operation Wildflower Justice. By 8 a.m., the most unlikely legal team had assembled around our breakfast table. Patricia at the head, laptop open, 3 legal pads filled with her precise handwriting. Frank arrived with his military-style organization and a folder thicker than a phone book. Sarah showed up armed with her smartphone, a portable printer, and social media savvy sharp enough to start a wildfire. The smell of Patricia's famous coffee cake mixed with printer ink and outrage as she laid out our 3-part battle plan. First, Patricia began, spreading documents across the table like a general. "We restored the HOA's legal standing properly. Frank, you're going to be our new president." Frank nearly spit out his coffee. "Ma'am, I just want to grow my tomatoes in peace." "And you will," Patricia said. "But first, we need someone with integrity to rebuild this HOA from the ground up." She explained Colorado's restoration process: file incorporation papers, pay the back fees, hold new elections. Simple, really, which made Brenda's neglect even more glaring. And here was the kicker. Under state law, once an HOA is dissolved, its rules are unenforceable until the corporation is legally restored. Brenda hadn't just been collecting illegal fees, she'd been enforcing rules she had no right to enforce. Second priority, Patricia continued, We freeze Brenda's account and recover every cent stolen. Sarah slid her laptop around for us to see. She'd built a meticulous database, cross-referencing violation notices with bank deposit dates, screenshots, timestamps even. Brenda's social media rants about certain types of people not understanding community standards. Add to that, Ring doorbell footage from half a dozen neighbors Brenda prowling around, snapping pictures without permission. Patricia's courthouse network came into play here. Jennifer introduced us to a civil attorney who specialized in HOA fraud. Turns out, under Colorado consumer protection law, illegally assessed homeowners can sue for triple damages plus attorney fees. Third priority, Patricia said, her tone dropping into that unmistakable courtroom authority. We make sure this never happens again here or anywhere else. Her instincts were dead on. Thornfield Property Solutions wasn't limited to our subdivision. A quick search revealed consulting contracts with 4 other HOAs across Colorado. Springs. Frank leaned back, arms crossed, and smirked. So, we're not just talking about taking down Brenda, we're talking about dismantling her entire network. Patricia didn't flinch. We're talking about following the evidence wherever it leads, and making sure every homeowner in Colorado knows their rights. Sarah's eyes lit up. I can build a website, HOA rights, fraud warning signs, legal resources, easy to search by neighborhood. We could make it go viral. The irony of the moment wasn't lost on us. We were organizing a neighborhood watch against the president of our neighborhood watch. Frank grinned. We should call ourselves the Covenant Enforcement Committee. Patricia laughed so hard she nearly spilled coffee all over her legal notes. But behind the humor, her strategy was ruthless. We wouldn't rush, we wouldn't shout. We'd let Brenda keep digging her own grave while we built a case so airtight, no lawyer could save her. Every violation notice Brenda issued now was another nail in her coffin. Every fine adds another count to the fraud charges, Patricia explained, sipping coffee like she was discussing the weather. Every dollar she tries to collect, more evidence, every discriminatory remark, documented. By noon that day, we had officially filed the Articles of Incorporation to restore Willowbrook Estates HOA as a legitimate entity. Frank was sworn in as interim president until proper elections. Sarah had spun up a private Facebook group where neighbors could share evidence safely. And Patricia, she was already sharpening her knives for the kind of legal showdown that would make Brenda wish she'd stayed in real estate instead of dabbling in organized bullying. Victory tasted like coffee cake and quiet justice. But Brenda didn't do quiet. Within 48 hours, she went nuclear. Her first strike was a formal complaint to the Colorado Commission on Judicial Discipline. 3 pages of single-spaced paranoia accusing Patricia of bias, conflict of interest, and my personal favorite, weaponizing the legal system for personal gain. The complaint landed on Patricia's desk during her Wednesday lunch break. She skimmed it, then calmly filed it in a folder labeled People Who Don't Understand How the Legal System Works. That evening, while trimming dead blooms off her wildflowers, she told me flatly, Marcus, Brenda just made her biggest tactical error. She challenged a sitting judge on procedural grounds without understanding judicial ethics. This is desperation. And desperate people make terrible decisions. Thursday proved her point. I was fixing a sprinkler head when a man in a wrinkled suit parked across the street and started snapping photos of our house with a full camera rig, not subtle at all. When I waved and headed toward him, he floored it, peeling rubber like a teenager ditching curfew. By dinner, Sarah's Ring doorbell had caught the same guy lurking near Patricia's courthouse parking space. Frank's veteran buddies ran the plates. The photographer was Gary Kellner, a bargain bin pie known for taking cases that real investigators laughed off. Friday, the flyer started. Neighbors found them on windshields. A grainy photo of Patricia in her judicial robes under the headline Corrupt Judge Living Among Us, printed in fonts so dated they looked stolen from a 1980s conspiracy cult newsletter. Saturday hit rock bottom. I was loading mulch at the garden center when I heard her voice, sharp, shrill, impossible to mistake. That's the husband. The judge's husband. I think they're better than everyone else. 2 aisles over, Brenda was holding court for strangers, broadcasting about corrupt judicial families and ruined property values like she was auditioning for a soap opera. She'd gone from HOA president to full-time gossip terrorist. That afternoon, Patricia's court administrator called with news. An anonymous complaint on Brenda's real estate letterhead, no less, had been filed demanding Patricia recuse herself from every HOA-related case in the county: parking disputes, zoning violations, small claims, everything. The absurdity is breathtaking, Patricia muttered, her voice a dangerous calm. She's essentially demanding that I step aside from half my docket because one woman got caught stealing. But Brenda wasn't done. Sunday night, she crossed a line no one comes back from. Patricia's 78-year-old mother was visiting, watering the wildflowers before dinner, when Brenda stormed across the street like she was leading cavalry. Excuse me, Brenda barked, making Mom drop the watering can. You need to tell your daughter to stop this harassment immediately. Mom blinked at her, utterly bewildered. I'm sorry, dear. Do I know you? I'm the HOA president, Brenda snapped. Your daughter is destroying our community with her vindictive legal attacks. As her mother, You have a responsibility to control her behavior. Control her behavior, like Patricia was some teenager sneaking out past curfew instead of a sitting judge. Frank happened to be walking his dog and witnessed the whole circus. By the time I got outside, Mom was shaken not with fear, but with rage. Rage at the audacity of being told to control her accomplished daughter by a thief in pearls. That night, Mom coped by stress-baking cookies, while Patricia calmly paged through judicial ethics guidelines. The kitchen smelled like chocolate chips and battle plans. She just threatened an elderly woman to get to me, Patricia said quietly. That's not strategy. That's collapse. And desperate people collapse loudly. Monday morning, Brenda went for broke. The certified letter arrived thick as a phone book. Thornfield v. Blackwood. Civil rights violation under color of law. She was suing Patricia in federal court demanding damages, removal from the bench, and an injunction to stop her from intimidating a private citizen engaged in lawful HOA governance. Patricia read it, expression flat as granite. This is legal nonsense wrapped in formatting, she told me. Like putting a bow tie on a garbage truck. But nonsense or not, federal suits demand responses, which eat time and money, and that was Brenda's playberry Patricia under paperwork. But Tuesday was the day her genius backfired. Patricia called me from the courthouse, her voice tight. Marcus, get down here now. I arrived to find Brenda in the lobby with a homemade protest sign. Corrupt Judge Blackwood, where is justice? She had planted herself right by the security checkpoint, so every lawyer, defendant, and clerk had to shuffle past her one-woman circus. The lobby, already heavy with disinfectant and courthouse dread, now reeked of second-hand embarrassment. This judge terrorizes innocent homeowners, Brenda shouted. She thinks she's above the law. Court security couldn't touch her public building, First Amendment, all that, but then Detective Ray Kowalski strolled in for testimony. Ray had stood before Patricia's bench at least 50 times over the years. He knew her as fair, steady, unshakable. He also knew crazy when it was screaming into a courthouse lobby. Ma'am, Ray said in his cop voice, stepping forward. Is there a problem here? Yes, there's a problem, Brenda whirled, sign shaking. This corrupt judge is persecuting me for doing my job as HOA president. Ray eyed the sign, the cameras, then her, and you are. Brenda Thornfield, president of Willowbrook Estates HOA. That woman, she jabbed toward the courtroom doors, is hearing cases that benefit her vendetta against me. Her voice carried like a bad soap opera echoing through every hallway. Lawyers paused mid-motion. Court reporters glanced up. Judges leaned back in their chairs, listening. Ray pulled out his notebook. What specific cases has Judge Blackwood heard that involve you personally? Brenda faltered. Well, none yet, but she could. It's the potential for bias. She had just described her federal lawsuit in a single sentence and made it sound exactly as frivolous as it was. Ray asked for ID, ran her name, and there it was. 3 unpaid parking tickets, a 6-month-old bench warrant for failing to appear. On a speeding violation, the same court she was protesting had already issued a warrant for her, ma'am, Ray said, his tone shifting to formal. I need you to come with me. Her cardboard sign hit the tile with a sad slap as Ray explained. She'd be spending the evening as a guest of the county jail system unless she posted bond. The irony was so rich you could have served it with coffee cake for dessert. And 3 days later, Brenda Thornfield made the phone call that ended her reign of terror forever. Yes, this is Judge Blackwood. What are you certain? No, officer. I'll be right there. Patricia appeared in the doorway, car keys already in hand, wearing that look she gets when someone is about to discover why lying to judges is a terrible life choice. Brenda just called. 911, she said, unable to hide a faint smile. She's reporting me for destroying community property and demanding my arrest for vandalism. The community property in question. My wife's wildflower garden, the very same Colorado natives that started this war 3 months earlier, now blooming in triumphant defiance. Despite Brenda's chemical sabotage attempts, she'd convinced herself that as HOA president, anything violating her interpretation of community standards technically belonged to the HOA. So in her mind, Patricia's gardening wasn't landscaping, it was destruction of community property. It was logic so twisted it belonged in a philosophy lecture on circular reasoning. I grabbed my phone. Frank, get over here and bring everyone. By the time the squad car rolled up, half the neighborhood had appeared on sidewalks and lawns like we'd all gotten a supernatural summons. Frank stood in our driveway, arms crossed like a retired drill sergeant ready to defend democracy. Sarah had her phone camera perfectly positioned. She knew history required documentation. Even Mrs. Peterson from Pine Street shuffled up with her walker. Unwilling to miss the show, the cruiser crept forward. Officer Ray Kowalski inside, scanning the swelling crowd like he was preparing for a small-town uprising. The air carried the sweet scent of Patricia's lavender and the sharp tang of anticipation. Justice was in the air. And then there was Brenda, standing on her immaculate lawn in a pressed business suit at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, clutching a folder thick as a city code book, pointing dramatically at Patricia like she was IDing a suspect in a lineup. There she is, Brenda declared. As Ray stepped out, the woman systematically destroying community property in defiance of lawful HOA authority. Ray's eyes moved, first to Patricia, kneeling peacefully among columbines in faded jeans and a dirt-smudged shirt, trowel still in hand. Then to Brenda, vibrating with indignation in her power suit. Finally, to the crowd all staring at Brenda like she'd just announced she was outlawing gravity. "Ma'am," Ray said with practiced calm. "Can you explain exactly what crime is being committed here? Destruction of community property, violation of HOA covenants, defiance of lawful authority," Brenda rattled off, waving her folder like it contained the Constitution itself. Ray walked toward Patricia, who rose slowly, brushing dirt from her knees with the dignity of someone who knew truth would outlast theatrics. "Your Honor," Ray said. The words struck the air like a gavel. The crowd's reaction was instant and electric. Mrs. Peterson's mouth fell open. Sarah's camera never shook, but her eyes went wide. Even Frank, who already knew, straightened with pride. But Brenda uttered devastation. Her finger froze mid-accusation. Her folder slipped from limp hands, papers scattering across her perfect lawn like legal confetti. She opened and closed her mouth like a malfunctioning goldfish, squeaking without words. "Your Honor," she croaked. "Judge Patricia Blackwood, Colorado Municipal Court," Patricia said calmly, offering her dirt-covered hand. Ray shook it, with a respect owed to someone he'd worked with for years. The murmurs rolled like distant thunder, neighbors whispering, chuckling, realizing they'd just witnessed David versus Goliath. David wore judicial robes beneath gardening clothes. Ray turned back to Brenda, his tone reserved for people whose grip on reality had slipped. "Ma'am, are you filing a complaint that a municipal court judge is gardening in her own yard?" Brenda's face cycled through more colors than a faulty traffic light. She can't. I'm the HOA. She defies my authority." That's when Frank stepped forward, his veteran's voice cutting through the morning. "Officer, this woman has been stealing money from our neighborhood for 2 years." And just like that, the dominoes toppled. Within 48 hours of Ray's arrest, Brenda resigned from every HOA position she held, not just here but across 4 other communities where Thornfield Property Solutions operated. Her federal lawsuit against Patricia dismissed with prejudice. Legal speak for "Don't ever bring this nonsense to court again." The Colorado Attorney General's office moved fast once the media caught the story. Politicians hate headlines about suburban tyrants robbing retirees, especially during election season. Brenda pled guilty to theft, fraud, and filing false reports. Her sentence: 3 years probation, full restitution, and a lifetime ban from HOA boards anywhere in Colorado. The restitution checks felt good, but watching her perp walk, priceless. Frank swore the real victory came when his tomato plants took first prize at the county fair 3 months later. That October, we held our first real HOA election with notice, ballots, and everything Brenda had always skipped. Frank was unanimously elected president, though his acceptance speech was just one long complaint about not wanting the job. Sarah became treasurer because, frankly, she was the only one under 60 who knew spreadsheets. The recovered $34,000 transformed our neighborhood. We built a community garden on what used to be Brenda's consulting fees. Neighbors grew vegetables, herbs, flowers that belonged in Colorado soil. Patricia's wildflowers mingled with basil and tomatoes every summer, a living reminder that communities thrive together, not under tyranny. Frank even donated part of his military pension to create the Willowbrook Educational Scholarship, funding local kids in law, public service, or agricultural sciences. 3 recipients so far, including Sarah's daughter, inspired to become a civil rights lawyer after watching her mom stand up to discrimination. But the crown jewel, our first annual Wildflower Festival, 1 year after Brenda's arrest, kids' laughter mixed with bluegrass music as Patricia's garden became the centerpiece. Booths lined with native plant experts. Frank's legendary barbecue drawing crowds from blocks away. Most important, we'd rebuilt what Brenda nearly destroyed: the simple joy of neighbors actually caring for one another. Kids played freely. Elderly residents planted memorial gardens. In peace, families decorated with pride, not fear of beige conformity. Patricia's wildflower garden was declared a state landmark, featured in Colorado Gardening magazine, studied by universities. The irony: Brenda's property value destruction, when increased our home values by 15%. The case set legal precedent, inspiring state legislation, the Thornfield Accountability Act, strengthening HOA oversight statewide. Patricia now speaks at conferences, reminding judges that justice works best when applied equally. Last month, a new neighbor asked Frank about our drama-free community. Frank grinned over his coffee. Drama-free? We had enough drama for a lifetime. The difference is we got rid of the one causing it. As for Brenda, she moved to Arizona, already cited for pool violations and harassing maintenance staff. Some people never learn. Takeaway: always demand proof. Your HOA filed required state paperwork before paying disputed fines. Document everything: photos, timestamps. No discriminatory enforcement can trigger federal investigations. Most importantly, find your communities. Frank, the one willing to stand up when clipboard bullies think they're kings. Your HOA, Horror stories help others recognize the warning signs. Drop your worst nightmare in the comments. We read them all and feature the wildest in future episodes. Subscribe to HOA Stories and ring the bell if you believe good neighbors beat petty tyrants every time. Next week, the parking enforcer who tried to ticket the new transportation director's car while she was standing right there watching. Community justice is sweeter than Patricia's wildflower honey. And that's saying something. You've been watching HOA Stories, where entitled Karens get a reality check. If this episode gave you secondhand rage or satisfaction, smash that like, share your take in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss more weekly suburban justice.